Welcome to SparkStarter, the podcast dedicated to sharing stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I'm your host, Elizabeth Goede, and I'm here to fan the flame of your entrepreneurial spirit. Each week, we bring to you inspiring stories of women trailblazers from around the world who have sparked change in their industries, powered their ideas into thriving businesses, and pioneered their way to success. So, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a startup enthusiast, or a seasoned business leader, join us as we delve into the journeys of these incredible women whose tales will surely ignite a spark in each one of us. My guest today is Rachael Spiewak. She is the founder of Rock Your Tribe, a consultancy that helps businesses grow, engage, and monetize their communities. With a fascinating background that includes co-founding a Pay What You Want nonprofit bicycle repair shop and a career as a full-time DJ, Rachael brings a unique perspective to the world of business. Through Rock Your Tribe, Rachael focuses on helping executive coaches sign more clients by leveraging online community building, Facebook group-based funnels, masterminds, email marketing, and in-person summits. Her mission is to empower coaches who are fantastic at the way that they do at what they do, but may be struggling with the social media marketing aspect of their business. Rachael, I'm so excited to welcome you here today to the show.
Thank you for having me, Elizabeth.
So, Rachael, you have such a fascinating background. I'm so excited to talk to you about it. And I want to start with the Pay What You Want bicycle shop. That's a really interesting model. Can you tell us a little bit about where your inspiration for that came from?
Sure. So I was a co-founder. It wasn't totally my idea. Always have to caveat that.
Sure.
So it was a group of us bicycle riders in Atlanta in the early 2000s when Atlanta was known as one of the worst cities for cycling in the United States of America. And we found that for a lot of people, your bike is your only mode of transportation. And
Sure.
so if you've got, even a really basic repair problem like a
Mhm.
flat tire and you don't have access to tools or parts or whatever you might need, dropping your bike off at a repair shop can be expensive and it might be there for a while. And for
Right.
some people, that's a really big problem. So we thought, well, what if we pooled all our resources because we just love bikes so much? We got together and bought a set of tools and got some parts donated, we could really help each other, help
Mhm.
ourselves, help the community. So it started, I was my friend's roommate, and in our house, we started it in the living room. So we would have neighborhood kids come knock on our door like, "Hey, are you the bike people? Yeah, sure, come on in."
I love that. I love that. Well, you've mentioned sort of a couple things that I wanted to talk about a little bit more in depth. So you were very specific to mention that you were a co-founder, and a lot of people don't sort of, I think, understand relationships that sometimes you get into. How many co-founders were there?
At least 3, but really it was a community. It was almost like a hive mind
Hmm,
kind of thing. So there was the core of us and then the wider conversation that was happening because it was such a terrible place to ride bikes. Those of us who lived in the same area, it was it's a kind of a small town in a big city kind of feeling. Um, we all knew each other, right? And we were all kind of having the same conversation with each other. So we put up flyers. This was the era of like printing flyers at work, right?
yeah.
When the boss wasn't looking. Printing flyers and putting them up around town. So we put one, I wanna say it was at a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's or something, and places of this nature, record stores and coffee shops and things like that. Um, and the flyer said that we were gonna meet at our house on a Sunday night. We would have a vegan potluck, and we would break to watch The Simpsons.
I love it.
We had, a living room full of people, and we lost power. It was winter, it was December, it was super cold, lost power for whatever reason, so we lit the room with our blinky lights. and had our meeting.
That is so fun. That's so fantastic. And I think it's also worth saying that, you saw a problem,
Mhm.
you figured out a for lack of a better way to describe it, a really scrappy way to solve it, right? You didn't let sort of not having a location stop you. You didn't let technology obviously stop you, and you formulated this opportunity of pay what you want. So my question is, when you do a pay what you want model, that's always it's an interesting model. It works certainly really well for digital types of things that don't actually have hard cost against them. But I am curious how pay what you want worked when you had actual physical product.
Well, for the most part, the product was donated to us. So it
Okay.
was either going to a landfill or going to us. So there's that. We did have to buy certain things that, like, you'd have to get new, like, chain grease or new tubes, right? Because you're on borrowed time if you're using, like, repatched tubes. Anyway, so our cost was super low, especially starting in our house. We eventually got a shop space, and I wanna say our rent at the time was maybe $300 a month
Mm,
for a storage space behind a restaurant off of a strip of, like a retail strip in East Atlanta. So it's all super cheap, and we made everything a suggested $5 donation. You need a part, $5, you need to borrow a tool, $5, and you need an hour in the shop, $5. People gave more
mm,
all the time. And people gave their time as well,
mm.
we sweat equity.
Sure.
People donated parts. They would bring, like, a whole entire beautiful bike and give it to us, and because they wanted other things, they had another project they wanted to do instead. So, it was actually surprisingly easy to self-generate our budget to begin, and no one was getting paid in the very beginning
Sure.
anyway, so
Sure.
that made, things super cheap, but
Mm,
it got to a point where I was going to grad school, and I had a coffee shop job at the
yeah.
time, so I would be in the back scooping muffin batter, like, early in the morning and, like, calling volunteers to make sure that the shop would be open later that night. So at a certain point, I had to go back to the crew and say, "Listen, for what I'm doing, I need to be able to get paid for this. I will
Right.
fund if I fundraise my salary for the next 3 months, will you agree to this?" And so they did, and we did that on a rolling basis, and that gave me the opportunity to start applying for grants for us, and that opened up some doors.
That is fascinating. So what happened to the pay what you want bike shop?
It's still going. It'll be 20 years old come this December, at least the
Oh,
idea of it, and I eventually left Atlanta and to pursue other things, but it's still rocking and rolling.
that's what an incredible thing to think that you started something that is still going and has a legacy associated with. I mean, 20 years is nothing to shake a stick at. That's a long time. So where did the DJ, professional DJ come in? Was that before or after the bike shop or at the same time?
Well, when I was in Atlanta, I would blow off steam at the nightclubs, of course, work hard, play hard, and I was just surrounded by DJs all the time, started to get my hands on it and managed and I had no idea what I was doing, but somehow managed to snag a Saturday night residency around the corner from my apartment. I don't know how, but I did.
That's
And then
incredible, actually. I mean, for anybody who I mean, to get residency to begin with, but, like, on Saturday night is, like, the premier time, so
yeah.
that's incredible.
Thank you. So then, it was time to make a change. I moved to New York as one does, right? And, I thought I was gonna get sort of a normal nonprofit job, and it just didn't pan out. That was not in the cards for me. So I fell back on my hobby, my side hustle, and just went for it, in New York. of all places, the birthplace of DJing.
Yeah.
And eventually I linked up with Scratch Music Group. They have a DJ school and booking agency, and so they would send me out on gigs. I would do retail gigs like H&M and Sephora, and they'd
Cool.
send me to malls to DJ, and I did weddings, and corporate events.
That's awesome, actually. I mean, what an interesting I can only imagine all of the people and connections that you made. And also, I mean, knowing that you have certainly dovetailed this into your coaching business, and you have a tremendous amount of experience in social.
Mhm.
And I know that when we first were getting connected to have you on the show, we had decided to delay your time of appearing so that we could actually talk to you after you got back from Washington D.C. because you received a really special invitation from Meta.
Yeah, so I'm part of an application-based, business community hosted by Meta. It's the Leaders Network, and anybody who's watching, you can apply to join this, by the way, so just Google Meta Leaders Network. Um, and through there, I was selected among a group of 250 of us to go to Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago. It was National Small Business Week,
Mm,
and we were participating in a lobby day. So we were grouped up by state, and then we went to go see our senators. Most of us saw a staffer, but we would go to our senator's office and talk about, and there's a little bit of a Facebook Meta agenda here, but to talk about when they start making legislation
mm,
about social media,
mm.
there are unintended consequences for
Right,
small business owners who
right,
rely on Facebook ads. We rely on data and
yeah,
targeting, and it's not that we can see everything about you. It's not we're not, the argument is about privacy and
right,
security,
right,
but when you start cutting us off from the services that run on that data, you know, Facebook ads, it's a very low barrier to entry.
right,
And small businesses need that because we're not about to buy a Super Bowl ad. That's not
right,
we're not gonna, buy billboard space, or I mean, maybe some people do,
right.
but you get
Yeah,
the idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And what I mean, of course, I mean, Meta is a business, right? And we have to understand that they certainly have their own agendas, but it's certainly social media allows us opportunities to be able to promote and engage with communities. And a lot of times, I mean, there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily even using these communities for profit. It truly is an ability to be able to have more of an affinity, right? And those
Mhm.
types of things. And so sometimes with policy, they don't always consider all the different aspects. They're just considering sort of the largest shiny object that they have in front of them. So what an incredible opportunity that Meta did afford for to send sort of their army of representatives out to have these conversations. How do you feel like the conversations were interpreted? Do you feel like you got a good sense of what action, or influence you might have had? What was the takeaway?
Well, we had a bit of a day conference as well as our field trip
Mm,
to Capitol Hill, where, we met with Meta's policy director,
mm,
who does this full time, is on Capitol Hill full time. This is his job.
mm,
And he presented to us what kind of opportunity we have and how much power we have as the actual small business owners. Because
mm,
our representatives, our legislators, they meet with lobbyists all the time. But to hear it from the people who are really driving local economies,
mhm,
we pack a bigger punch, and they're willing to listen to our stories. So, for me in Florida, we went to Marco Rubio's office, and we met with a staffer. The staffer's name was Luis, and he was extremely receptive to everything we had to say. He had great feedback. He would, reflect back to us what he heard us saying. So he was definitely being an active listener. So we felt like, our effort was worthwhile and well received.
yeah, that's fantastic. I'm glad. And, hopefully, I'm assuming that you had representatives from sort of all 50 states or
I
roughly?
don't know that we had every single state covered,
Okay.
um, but among the 250 of us, there was definitely a good, um, a good show out.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, is there any particular policy that you knew that you were trying to advocate for? Like, in other words, is there something that we know that we could keep our eyes out for and say, "Oh, well, I know that Rachel helped influence that."
Well, when you hear them talk about social media privacy,
Mm,
that's what we were there to talk about. It wasn't like a specific piece of legislation,
sure.
but around that issue because it's always coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think privacy is a major topic. I do a lot of work in artificial intelligence, and
Mhm.
certainly privacy is a big piece of that as well
Yeah.
of protection of data. So certainly a good topic. And I love sort of all these facets that you're in. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you transitioned from the DJ, DJ life and lifestyle and sort of really being ingrained in New York and ingrained in that industry? How did you actually make the transition into Rock Your Tribe? How did the inspiration for that come about?
Sure. Well, the nonprofit work and the DJ work I see as part of the same thing. It's about bringing people together for a common purpose and building community on the dance floor or in a bike
Mhm.
shop. Same thing.
Mhm.
I met my husband in New York. He's a DJ too, and he had a daughter, who was 4 and a half at the time. Now she's 17, and I know. Um, and so when we got together and we were, becoming a family and getting married and all of that, it just really changed priorities for
Sure.
me. I was a mommy all of a sudden, and becoming a step parent is definitely a different adventure than when you when you birth the child. I
Right.
have, a son who just turned 7, so definitely a different experience with both kids. And I also needed surgery at the time. I had an injured hip from a
Oh,
staph infection when I was a kid.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I was, like, walking around and lugging my DJ gear around, and it just did me in with my hip, and I needed hip replacement surgery.
Oh
So
my
all of this taken together, had surgery, got married, and then, like, immediately had surgery after. We wound up moving back to my hometown just to make life easier because my parents were here and other family were here. So I needed to do something for an income. I had a day job for a little while.
sure.
Um, yeah, as one does sometimes.
Of course.
And but, at the end of towards the end of 2019, I had just, like, I had had enough. I had a 2-year-old at that point, and where how old was Ruby at that point? She must have been in middle school. Well, she would be 12, right? She's 10 years older. Anyway, um, needed to pivot to something online. I had no idea what I was gonna do, like, no clue. I just knew that online business was a thing, but just kind of clawed my way through the jungle of the internet and landed on Facebook groups and helping entrepreneurs with their Facebook groups, and and then the pandemic started.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, as I was figuring all of this out, but kind of kind of worked out good for me in a way, timing wise.
Yeah,
And I've been doing it ever since. It's been through a couple of iterations. It's
sure.
an evolving thing, but the core of it is still community based work
Right.
and building brands. So with the DJ work, the retail DJ work, for example, I would get sent to a retail location, and corporate would supply us with a song list
Mhm.
of music that was aligned with their brand.
Sure.
But on the ground,
Right.
it's different. The people coming into the store, and I'm in New York, like, people
Right.
are very serious about their taste in music there.
They
Very
are.
They are very particular. So I was learning about, okay, how do I get people to come into the store and stay in the store? Do I abide by what corporate wants, or do I take matters into my own hands as the professional here, right? So it was an interesting way to look at marketing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I was definitely thinking about, okay, my goal is to get the shoppers to stay and shop
Right,
more.
right.
What's it going to take to do that? So these are all things that rolled right into what I'm doing now. It's like, what's gonna draw somebody into a community and make them wanna stay there and make more purchases?
Yeah, it's a really interesting, to think about that dichotomy and that process between sort of the, you know, somewhat removed and detached piece, right? Because you also have other things that come into play with corporate, right? They care about licensing, they care about rights, and do they have the ability in a social or in a storefront to be able to play certain things that maybe they don't have the licensing to, right? So those are the things that are playing into their mind, and
Mhm,
so the more removed they get, and the more they think about the things that are like the liability concerns is certainly where they make decisions. And then you're on the ground saying, yeah, but I think the whole reason why you hired me is to actually keep people here so that they'll buy something. And it's a really interesting balance to think of.
mhm.
So when you think about, dovetailing that experience into what you do now, what would you say has been the biggest struggle for you in sort of the Rock Your Tribe um, phase of your business?
The biggest challenge of the whole thing was honestly me.
Yes,
When you hear coaches and the like talking about getting your mind right, it's the truth. It's when when you're the product, you know, you have to love the thing you're selling to
right.
sell it well, right? So the product is you. It really starts with your relationship with yourself.
Mm,
And that was the toughest thing and the thing that I put off the longest. So even though I made big gains before working on that piece, I kept bumping into a ceiling
mm,
every time. I would build something, and then it would it there was a cap to it.
sure.
Um, and then finally, through a whole series of events, and if Greg Furon is watching this, my friend Greg, who helps women lose weight and keep it off. So um, I went on a weight loss journey with him that led to going to see a therapist eventually, right? Because it all comes back to the mental, no matter like
Yep,
where
sure
you
does.
in in personal development, it all goes back to what's in here. And that was the biggest struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point that about us being sometimes our own barrier, our own obstacle. And I think sometimes, and I'm not sure if you would say the same thing, but I think sometimes, we've had certain experiences, right? Whether it was in school or in previous jobs or in other relationships, and somehow we get like that little seed of doubt, right?
Mhm,
It's like I think they talk about it as like the mustard seed, right? So it's like you get this little tiny seed of doubt, and those are sometimes the things that hold us back. It's not our abilities. We have all the abilities. It's just all
mhm.
of a sudden that thing pops up. So when you look at the type of work you do and you look at your business, what would you say is the thing that you love the most? The thing that you just love absolutely about having Rock Your Tribe?
Well, it's the freedom and flexibility that it
Mhm.
affords me. So this morning, I actually have a local client, and I drove over to her house to do some work for a little while. I spent some time on Zoom talking with um, a new friend that I met at another. went to Toronto a couple of weeks ago to work with another client on her in-person summit, met her podcast guy and had a conversation with him. I get to be here on this podcast with you. And then as soon as we're done here, I'm going to a call with somebody that I met in DC for the Meta event. So um, it's that flexibility to kind of buzz around the room, right? Like I'm at like the virtual party, hanging out with all my friends.
Yeah, I love that. And, I mean, I do think having your own business, you get to be in control. So however you decide, you want to spend that time is up to you, so that then it always is filling your cup, right?
Mhm.
Um, and one thing that sometimes we don't really think about is like the unexpected pieces, right? So, being a woman owned business, certainly depending upon what kind of industry you're in, what kind of work that you do, it can be, and frankly, I would think even from like your DJ days, et cetera. I mean, there's certainly a level of adversity and obstacles that sometimes we have to overcome that's a little bit different than what men face. What would you say has been sort of the biggest surprise for you um, in since you sort of started this next phase of your business?
Well, since you mentioned it, I've been in male-dominated spaces, the bike shop, the world of
Right.
DJing. So I've always been that girl,
Yeah.
in the boys' clubhouse. Um, but to be perfectly honest, at least, with the online business especially, has not been a barrier. And even with DJing, brands were specifically looking for women DJs in their store because a lot of the brands catered to
Yeah.
women.
Right.
So I was at an advantage there. So I haven't, we were talking off camera before about women being underrepresented in business, but I just got into business school. So um, I really, and maybe it's, my own mental orientation towards it, but I don't see being a woman as being a barrier to any of this.
So, what do you think has been the surprise in having your business?
The surprise. That's really what you were asking.
That's okay. I I
Maybe
enjoyed where you went with it.
yeah. Maybe that it's worked.
You know what? There's some truth to that, right? I mean, we sort of throw spaghetti at the wall and hope that something sticks. And what a great opportunity you had in doing that. So, when you talk about helping people with their in-person retreats, can you talk a little bit more about what you do with those?
Sure. So it's really been the one experience so far, but I'm looking to do it more because community happens in real life as much as it happens online. So I really enjoyed about this particular experience helping with this in-person summit was building the online community and then bringing it into the real life arena and how does that work?
Mhm.
Um, so I enjoy the marketing of it, especially. We were working on ticket sales strategy. So I got to employ what I've learned from DJ world and, venue and concert world. So we had our ticket pre-sales and then we had our wait
Yeah.
list and taking pieces from my performance and entertainer world and bringing it back over into business world. I really enjoy.
Yeah, I love that. That's so and even just like the whole, I mean, red thread through everything is really rooted in community and being able to support, you first sort of started supporting, I'm going to say like at the neighborhood level, and then you got to sort of like the city level, and now you're at sort of the business level, and what a great sort of, you know, benefit that you're bringing to all these people and being able to sort of work together and and from that perspective, which I love. And so as we come to the end, which I feel like I have so many more questions about like everything, but as we come to the close, I want to make sure that we cover a couple things. One is, how do people reach out and get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more?
Yep. You can go to rockyourtribe.com. You can email me at rachel@rockyourtribe.com, or you can join my Facebook group, which is Rock Your Tribe, a community for entrepreneurs. I've trademarked it, so it's mine. So if if you look up Rock Your Tribe, it all should come to me.
Excellent, excellent. And the other thing that I ask every guest when they come on is to give one word or a short phrase that they would give as inspiration for another female entrepreneur.
You can do it.
Yeah, I love that. It's all possible, all possible. So, Rachel, we've covered very very diverse topics today. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about today that you would want to share?
Did I mention I just got into business school? Yes, I did. I'm
You
just really
did.
excited
I'm
about
s- I'm so excited for you that you got into business school. That's
that.
awesome. Do you wanna share where?
At Florida International University, the number 4 ranked public school in America, which happens to be local for me, so that's nice, and they've got a concentration in entrepreneurship, so that's what I'll be doing.
Excellent. Excellent. That's so fantastic. Anything else?
Um, just a big thank you to you, Elizabeth, and your community, and I appreciate you have for having me here today.
Oh my gosh, it was my absolute pleasure. I'd love to have you back again, maybe when you're partway through business school and you can sort of explain all of the goodness that is happening there. And with that, we're I want to just thank you so much for Rachel for being my guest today. Thank you to all of our listeners that have joined us today on the Spark Starter podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure bringing you the uniquely inspiring stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I've been your host, Elizabeth Goede, and on behalf of all the awe inspiring women entrepreneurs out there, I encourage you to not only dream big, but to ignite those dreams into action. Remember, every spark can lead to an extraordinary fire. So keep the spark alive for today, tomorrow, and the vibrant future beyond. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to never miss a spark. Until next time, stay ignited.